Well, here's a K Line. Oh, it's a repeat episode. No, it's not. It's the second Klein, second K-Star line, K-Line in 2 weeks. This one belongs to Ian. And the first one was a great guitar. A little bit of the usual things to take care of, tiny bit of action reduction, a little bit of fret slap removal. And to be straight with you, that's what we're in for right now. So this is, I had a play of this the other night without being plugged in actually. I just played it acoustically and I really liked it. It felt just the business. First of all, it's light. Let's just take a little tour over it. First of all, it's light. It's got standard kind of old-fashioned style of split post tuners. Totally reliable, no problem. The neck has been, well, it's been sort of taken back to the wood, some grime sort of put into it, and then I don't quite know what's happened. It's been maybe sprayed over and then returned to a sort of satin finish, but it's not sticky. It's a nice smooth finish. And then we've got a light, fairly light body, which has been relicked. It's got some checking and so on, as you can just see there in the reflections. Got some checking, been relicked, bashed a little bit on purpose, you know, the keys and all the rest of it. But it's not outstanding, it's not ostentatious, it's not, I don't know, I mean, that's not worn away. It doesn't look like nitro there, but I haven't checked the spec on this, but it's been kind of scraped away rather than worn away the way nitro does. But you've got a sort of nicely aged, yellowy scratch plate, mucky pots. You've got a Wilkinson tremolo, which is performing absolutely perfectly. Got a really nice feeling neck. Frets are nice. A little bit sharp, so I'm going to round those off a little bit for Ian. We've got a nut here, which at the moment I think is pretty good, like the last K Line, but it's already cut incredibly low here. So if we drop the action at all, we could be into, you know, buzzing out territory. So it's just a, you know, it's a kind of an interesting thing because it's a basic, unremarkable black Strat, black and white Strat. It's got a little bit of float in the tremolo. So you can do your Jeff Beck. A very funny style, didn't they, of sort of holding on to the tremolo. I don't know whether he held it with boop boop, two hands, or I mean 2 fingers or what, but it was a lot of downward pressing and then some pulling up as well, I think. Yeah, but the tremolo, the Wilkinson, you know, they're just great tremolos. I don't know whether this is the Music Lily M series one or whether it's the more expensive one, the full strength one, which is now probably about 50 quid versus the 20 quid or whatever. Maybe different now with tariffs. But overall, it just has a great feel to it. And it's the kind of guitar that I thought to myself, do you know what I would like to do? I should like to sample the neck and take the measurements and so on and so forth. And I wonder if I should do that today. It's one of those things that messy. Dust. Oh, hazel dust. So we've got this device here, which I can do profiles with, but I think we probably need to wait until we've got the strings off type of time, and then we'll do paper that we'll draw, transcribe the shapes onto, and then we'll map those onto plastic at a later date. But it does feel such a nice neck, and there isn't really anything astonishing about it. I think it's 9.5. Now what I noticed is there's no chokes on bends. only vaguely come close to zizzing a little bit. But the things that Ian asked me to look out for was that fret slap. He's called it string buzz, but I think it's fret slap on the lower strings, which is quite common. The action here is a tiny bit higher than I'd like, but generally speaking, this is almost already at the right action. Now, if we got USA spec, what's it? So we got, I think we've got EU spec. Ah, did I say EU? So we can, yeah, we can adjust these. Of course, they are the Wilkinson. What am I talking about? Anyway, so we're mostly in the right place now. I like the fact that this tremolo is working. So this is not quite at the sort of standard range of pitch, but which would normally be tone and a half on the G, tone on the B, and a semitone on the E. It's half a tone short, semitone short on each. But it's such a nice feeling tremolo, and it's working so well. I just feel like, why wouldn't you keep it like that? I mean, often I recommend putting them down to not float. The only thing you have is a little bit of give when you dial backwards on the arm, but you can sort of take care of that in the back here with a little, probably need a pointy thing like this, a little thingy key. Now, there's a slight kind of issue here, because if you actually do it with pressing down on the arm on its own, then you can't really get in there to, can we put it on there? Maybe we can. There we go. So we just want to tighten this up a fraction. It's pretty much mostly damp as it is, so tiny bit of clicking, and it is the movement of the arm. That's the very smallest amount. It's compared to a screw-in tremolo, it's nothing. Now, it's got rolled fingerboard edges, and often it's interesting to note when people say to me, can you roll the fingerboard edges for me? And I'm going to see if I can get a view of how it comes out. So maybe back here is a bit better. If you look, trying to get the light in the right place. When you get the light right, you can see that rolled fingerboard edges tend to do the following. They tend to go, I can't keep it still enough. They tend to sort of look like they're sagging in there a bit and coming back up, sagging, coming back up, sagging. It's very slight, but it's by definition you have to have that, because when you're rolling them, if you're rolling them after they're fretted, then you are basically, you can't roll the fret at the same time. So you're basically rolling in between, which always comes out stronger in the middle between the frets. No matter how you do it, you might be able to do it if you use a very narrow file or something, but it tends to sag in the middle, and it gets a flare. It sort of flares a little bit, and it's not bad at all. But what it does mean is that, come on, focus. It means that at the point where the fret comes to the edge, it sort of fills back in, so that this is not on a kind of, it doesn't look like it's standing on a kind of promontory. A word that I even ever use. Anyway, so it's nicely rounded as is. I tend to do it before I fret, and only do it a very small amount. If somebody wants it more than that, then I think I kind of leave it to them to go in between the frets as already fitted, because the last thing I want, I mean the last thing anyone wants as a tech, is to be creating a situation where, so what I want really is, there's my fingerboard and there's my neck. I want to fret right to the end of this, like so, and I don't want any messing about. Problem is, if we take that off first, we take our frets away and we round the edge, and we go like so, which is a really nice feeling rounded edge. Like so, rounded edge. Then what happens is our fret either has to start much further inwards, or if you don't want that to happen because you're end beveling it, what happens is it sort of sits out there like so. And if you're lucky, you just get this little tiny lift there which catches the fingers. And if you're really unlucky, what you find is that the roll starts a little bit closer to the edge and it ends up like that, which you don't want at all. So I would much rather do it between the frets afterwards than too much beforehand. But as I say, when I do it, I usually do a little bit just to take the sharp edge off. So I've got a fingerboard here, which is going to be carved, but it's still it's a little bit softened off. I've gone over it with a tiny bit of sandpaper. I'm not sure you can even really tell going down the edge there. See if I can zoom in without dropping it on the floor. One-handed stuff is never very good. Okay, so typically the light's not good enough to show you what I'm trying to show you. Anyway, it's still fairly sharp and rough, so it will be softened slightly, but concentrate on putting any further roll into it after the frets are safely in place. Okay, so I don't think this should be a troublesome thing. The nut, as with the last one, I think I got my special Dr. Evil glasses out for the last one, because I can't really tell how slanted or not these nuts were cut. To me, the angle is very, very minor anyway, even with a one of those things, string tree thing. But yeah, it's marginal, minimal. So I'd want to make sure that was actually sloping in the right direction. So for that, it would be handy to have a very sharply cut pencil, if I can do that without messing up. Sharply cut pencil in order to get some pencil lead into the nut slots. I nearly forgot to tell myself what I had to bring home today. And what I have to bring home is the the nut files. Got to bring them home, so mustn't forget that. So here's my pencil, kind of cut back, but it's a bit of a soft B. It's a 2B, so it's good for putting into nut slots, but it breaks remarkably easily. Quite difficult to get to a really, really sharp point, but we get there eventually. Right, put it there so I can come back to it easily. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I think the first thing I'll do is I'll take, I noticed the relief on this is practically none whatsoever. So my take on this would be, I can hear it. So it is fractionally more than none, but the question I would have here is it enough more than none that it will withstand a tiny bit of seasonal change? And I think it's likely, the risk is if it flattens out, you lose notes down here. So I will make a note to self is to put a tiny little bit of extra dial in, a tiny bit of extra relief when we've done the leveling. And it's going to be, because you do it with this end of the neck, it's going to be difficult. People do take the neck, slack it off, and well, maybe we'll do it that way, the traditional Fender way. Dial in a tiny bit of relief above what's already on there. I'm talking tiny. So what I'll do then is straight away go to So this is here's why I'm thinking about the tremolo business. The reason why I like to make a decision about the tremolo, as in, is it going to be fully floating? Is that really critical to somebody's playing style, or does it want to be down only? Is the only reason I kind of hesitate over one or the other is that there shouldn't be a tuning issue on this. If you have the nut is good, if the strings are fully stretched out, you should be able to play, and there's no obstruction to the tremolo. You should be able to play just fine and it stay in tune. The question is, if you set it fully floating, and then you want to set it down only a bit later on, if you think the tuning isn't good enough for you and you want to go some way towards stabilizing it, well, one way is to set it, dial the screws in the back here and just bring the plate of the tremolo back to the body. If you do that, you also reduce the action of the strings, so you have to be then prepared to reset those. So for some people that's a real pain. If you know they get the guitar back set up and then they go to reset the tremolo, that messes up the action, and then they feel like they're back at the start, and then either they can make a mistake setting it up and then they have to send it back, or it's just not ideal. So I tend to say to people is, if your playing style is a bit of this, down and back up, which most people are, as opposed to, if you're not usually a back pitch raiser, then I would suggest that you start off with the tremolo decked. And what I suggest you do is go to the back like this and dial it, tighten it up, and dial the screws in. You do this if I would do this if I was going to do the setup and then reset it floating, because actually if you're going to have it floating, I'm going to want to put it to the standard range anyway, if that's what we sort of aim for in the end. But at the moment I'm looking for getting it flat on the deck, and it's nearly there, but of course it's also going to be quite a bit above pitch now as we're pulling it back. So once we tune it, we should be nice and flat on the deck, and then I can treat it from that point onwards as effectively hard-tailed from the point of view of the setup. So So now we've got this flat. It will still work as a tremolo because, of course, we can put the arm in and give it a little push. Now with the strings slackened off a bit, I've got less pressure on this, so technically I can come off the springs a bit now. This will make it change the tuning a little bit. What I'm looking for is a balance where it's touching the top of the guitar lightly, so we can go down and it will go back, but with as little force as necessary as possible. Now the downside of having the tremolo set to touching down and a little down only is it will constantly get a little clunk. And what I sometimes do is somewhere, is it at home or is it here? I can't remember which. Did I put it here or I took it there? it was just hanging around, just hanging around, just hanging around. Where I put it, it was just standing somewhere looking at me saying, use me up. I'm standing here doing nothing. I have a feeling it might be sitting at home looking at me in a similar sort of way. I had a sort of sheets of felt that I could use, but I sometimes would consider sticking something under there. So, in the absence of this, here it is, staring at me. I knew it was staring at me. No, this is not. The one I'm thinking about is at home. That was this one here. I've got is hook and loop. So let's use a bit of, a little bit of this old stuff. Now, obviously this is, I'm doubling this up so it doesn't keep the sticky side under there. But let's imagine we had that like that. So a little piece of, tiny bit of fuzz underneath, or a little bit of tape underneath the back of the tremolo will stop it doing that clunk down, which is just annoying. If we're going to set it up floating, which I think we should for this guitar, then we won't need to worry about that. But it is kind of handy to think about having, even if I just stuck a tiny little strip of Gorilla Tape to the underside of that, always take it off, but just take that clunk off if we ever go back to down only, which can be quite useful. So, if we're starting out as hard-tailed for now, and we'll set the action up differently later, but we'll do the leveling, fret leveling as hard-tailed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to now check my playing action here at the last fret, which is where I like to do it. Now this is just currently now gone down a little bit, so I'm going to just bring this up to my perfect 1.5 on this last fret for this type of guitar, and then that needs to be a tiny bit, no, that's about right actually. I'm going to go lower. Yeah. So I'm going to just check this last lot by eye as we go across. You get used to the way the strings go across. Now that's a little bit low now. So I'm going to bring that up, and consequently the B will need to come up as well. So I want 1.25 on this high E, which I've got there. I would say that that's about right. That's about right. So everything is kind of good from there. So what I'm going to do, let's do the scary truss rod adjustment, because it's just the way it is. It's difficult to do. So we put on a capo. We'll slack off the strings. Now, what did I say we're going to do? We're going to go counterclockwise because it's currently a bit flat, so we want to slack off the truss rod a tiny bit. Take that off. We're mostly loose at the moment. So what people tend to do is they tend to take these screws out a certain amount, and then when these are out a certain amount, providing the holes are big enough through the wood, then you can sort of wiggle the neck up far enough to make your adjustment, and then you can put it back down, neck back down in the pocket, and check if it's worked. But of course you've got to go up to pitch to do that. So I'm just going to loosen these off so there's a bit of wiggle room. May or may not be quite enough. Let's go to about there, and about there, and about there. Okay, so the idea is we can now, wow, that feels really tight. I've got a feeling that we aren't going to get away with that, because I think these holes are being held by the screws, which is not something you want to have happen. Ideally, with any bolt-on neck guitar, you want these through holes going through the pocket to be sufficiently wide that these screws go through them very loosely. But This feels like they're a bit, maybe just biting a little bit. I could be wrong, but it wasn't wanting to move. So to be quite honest, I'm just as happy taking them right out to do this adjustment as I am doing them halfway. You can look on videos and you'll see people doing vintage fenders with the truss rod adjusted down here, and they just take it up a little bit, and then they sort of go to this side and then they wiggle it out. But even this is really, really snugly fitted. I'm just going to slack these off a tiny bit more, but they are pretty loose. So what I want to get this neck heel up out of the pocket enough so that I can make an adjustment. So I'm sort of wiggling it. Now we've got it up technically enough. Now we're a little bit flat, so I want to go counterclockwise, and I'll get my screwdriver, and the biggest one I've got should work. Failing that, if you haven't got a big Phillipsy one, you can get a big slot and use the slot part of it. So I'm going to go counterclockwise slightly by that much, and if that doesn't do the job, then I'll have to make another adjustment. But that's the downside of these vintage fender designs, putting the adjuster on the heel end, is that all your adjustments are sort of hit and miss. It's not the end of the world. Once you get it right, it will stay mostly right for the period. There's some, what's that? There's a strange stain, or is that a color touch up? I'll show you this close up in a minute. Just a slightly odd thing I've seen. Okay, we're in 2. So it's lost in the corner. I might be just some sort of goo that slipped in there that needs. You see that? That might need just cleaning out with some buffing compound or something. But I'm trying to zoom. Oh my lord! See it there? That grey stuff. It could be just spillage of something, but it's a bit unsightly. What I'll do is I'll just do I'll try with some, the stuff I'm thinking of is solvent, naphtha. I'll try with some naphtha first, and then if it shifts a bit, then I'll know it can come off, and then I'll use a bit of polishing compound at some point. Okay, so there's my start adjustment for the truss rod. And what I'm going to do now is, with the strings all loose, I'm going to come back up to, throw that on the floor, back up to pitch. Now I've got a feeling that at our chosen height, the first fret action may be too low, in which case we probably have to go for a nut swap. This one's already shimmed, I'm pretty certain. It's sitting, I think this bone is already sitting on a piece of dark timber, which is fine. You sit it on a bit of rosewood and it, you know what I've just done? Hold fire. I should just slack these off. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with shimming the nut on a piece of rosewood if it blends in. It's the same material and it looks pretty good. What I'm just going to do is put the strings off to the side for a minute, and use this opportunity just to mark up the frets, since we're going to be leveling them anyway. So off to the side, and so. So I've been planning my attack on this Yamaha acoustic that Paul donated to me specifically for the purpose of trying out the John Minor steam neck reset method. Now, anyone who's sort of listened to me talk about this will know that I'm, by definition, or my start point is being skeptical of this, and not because I've got any animosity towards the people who've done it and say it works for them, just because it doesn't sound right to me in terms of you know, what's happening to the structure. Yeah, I won't go into it in huge annoying detail, but whoops, get back on there. Suffice to say, I have reasons for not being very convinced that it's a long-term fix. Nor would I be, and I'm not confident to do it at all, and nor would I be until I've tried it myself. If I found that it worked, and I couldn't find any other negative reason why not to do it, I might try it on something else, but so the point about it is I'm not going anywhere near it without conducting an experiment. And of course the experiment obviously risks killing off a guitar. Now just one thing, I've just done screwed this back in, and it may well be that I've screwed it back in slightly tighter than it was before. There is a tiny bit more relief, so that's achieved what I wanted, but this has actually changed. The action here is raised back to about 1.75, which I don't want. So I'm going to go back down on this a slight little bit. So you have to remember that how tight or how much you screw in the neck can make quite a difference to where your action sits, all other things being equal. So this has gone above 125, so everything's raised up. I thought it was feeling tall, and that was just taking the neck off and screwing it back on, and I can only account for it by screwing it on slightly tighter to the pocket wood than it was before, which is quite something. So I guess we all have our own ways of refitting things and how much you'd feel comfortable screwing up those neck screws and so forth, but you can see that it's made a difference to the playing action immediately, such that I'm making these adjustments now. So nothing else has changed, it's just the removal of the neck and the reattachment of it, and it can make that much of a difference to the playing action. So it kind of goes to show that on an acoustic guitar, the amount of change required to make this action here feel incredibly tall is also very, very small. And so when it comes to the acoustic guitar, the neck only has to rise up, or the headstock only has to rise up a tiny little bit, and you've suddenly got a much higher playing action, which requires either a neck reset or some sort of activity to take care of it. Right, so I'm just going to check these. So we're on 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, just under, get there in a sec. 25. Very hard to split up that slight difference. We're talking 5 degrees of a circle. Obviously we're detuned now. Okay, we're at the target action. We've got our frets marked up, tightened up on the neck pocket, and we're ready to go. Got rain coming in tomorrow. It'll be extreme rain events, apparently. Okay, so the neck's back in alignment, it's good. What I'm looking at down here is we're not as bad now, with a little bit more relief. It's not quite as flat, so giving it that bit more relief gave us back a tiny amount there, which is good. When I come to it in a minute, I will probably I'll probably do some filing here just to make sure that the slot is going backwards as far as we can be sure, because I find I'm not sure it's sitting in exactly the right spot, or it could be just a little bit flat going through the nut, which makes a huge difference. Anyway, let's concentrate on the fret leveling part of it now. So we've got, I refreshed the paper on the banana fret leveling beam. Sold a golden banana pack with ebooks, so a golden banana pack plus yesterday, which was great. That's going to go out. Obviously, it's going to go on Tuesday because of the bank holiday now. So the customer's already got the ebooks and the actual custom setup leveled and flattened and ready to go. Tool is going to go out on Tuesday morning first thing. So let's bring that in a bit. Okay, so my aim now is to calibrate this tool to match the curve on the guitar. And it doesn't it matches it, it samples it and it copies it, but it does it in such a way that you get a smooth curve, tiny minor, very, very tiny curve representing the tiny curve on here. But this one's smooth and linear, whereas the one on here has the little ups and downs of caused by the compression of the neck. And it's that compression that over the years I've come to see has a major major impact on the way the frets sit, and therefore how level they are relative to each other. And so this is like adds you another 25% of accuracy to what can be done with the more traditional leveling methods. Now, I'm not really doing much in the way of pressure on here. It's mostly the weight of the block bar, and I'm doing a diagnostic thing, which is great, and it's showing me, like the previous one, it's actually showing me a really good set of frets. There's a low one here right at the end. There's a tiny bit of low here, but it's hardly worth mentioning. So that's really encouraging. So good for them. I mean, I've not looked at the specs of the K Lines. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that had been through the plec. And some people would say, well, why do you plec it if it's, why do you level it if it's already been through the plec? And it seems to be there's a little bit of extra accuracy I can get by doing it by hand compared to the plec machine. I can't give you an exact scientific explanation why, but it seems to be the case. I've had quite a few guitars through that have been plecked and they still benefit from a little bit of extra work. And I think possibly one of the things that the plec doesn't look to do, which I do look to do, is exactly this job that you'll see me doing in a minute, which is where a customer wants a reasonably low action, but they're picking up some what they call fret excessive string buzz, and it's a kind of a clattering of the strings somewhere in their train. And one of the things that characterizes it is that it tends to be on a series of notes, quite a big large spread of notes up the neck, and in other words, it's not a buzzing relegated to single spot. that's pretty good. Now I'm going to recalibrate for the G track. And the adjustments I make are absolutely tiny, if I need to make them at all. If the curvature, the relief is consistent across the radius, which goes the other way, then I don't actually need to make any adjustment at all. In this case, you don't have to adjust between the B and the G. Now typically, the G track that I'm doing now is a place where you alleviate a lot of string chokes when bending the high E across the neck with a low action and with some wavy ups and downs. And there are wavy ups and downs in almost every fingerboard. It's just the nature of wood, especially, you know, maple and rosewood together. These are great condition frets, I've got to say, in top marks to K Line. I'm only looking really to improve that, the fret slap, as I call it, on the final frets down here. Yeah, so every single neck made with rosewood and maple and similar types of wood reacts differently to the compression, I've found over time, and that different reaction means they bunch, and you get hills and valleys in different places. Okay, now this is telling me that this D track is slightly deeper in the radius than the G one. So I've added a tiny bit of curvature to the tool, and it's really telling me it's different. Wow, that's quite a difference. So we've got some sort of, okay, that is quite a difference. I'm gonna adjust it a bit more, and I'm gonna sort of second check or get a second opinion on myself, because that's quite a big change. Right, that is definitely on the mark there. That's definitely what I would call calibrated, which is, you know, it's a visible curve. So let's say I'm happy I've calibrated that. Let's check the relief here. No, it's still, you know, 1/4 mil max. It's not excessive. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to work, but I've noted that between the, if I were going to, let's recalibrate, or let's put the calibration for the D track in against the G track and see if they really are that different, because it seems to me they are. So this should be off now. Yeah, this is too curved for the G track, so there is a deepening on the D on this side of the center line. How about that? So you know, it's good to double check it to make sure, you know, I'm not making something up, or I'm not imagining something. So now our calibration on this tool is consistent with the relief profile. Now here I'm working on this is where the string buzz will be found, that what I call fret slap. And what I mean by that is, as soon as you're into the thicker strings and the wound strings, they spin more and require more space, and it's those strings that start to get a little noisy when you play them with a low action, because if there's these little hills and valleys and they're spinning more than the plain strings, they're going to be more likely to clip into the top of these hills, not the valleys, because they're down the bottom. So what I'm aiming to do with this leveling process is to pretty good. It shows a little bit of zzz if you dig in and hit it quite hard. So I'll give it a little tiny bit more, since we're doing it very lightly anyway. A little tiny bit more, gravity only really. Just what I'm aiming to do is to effectively impose the the gentle curve of this rod onto the slightly bumpier fingerboard, and I really just want to do it by repetition and gentle moving from side to side. What I don't want to do is press very hard at all, and really the amount it's adjusting is tiny, but it's, you know, those little tiny amounts that make a difference at a chosen low action. You know, we know that's true because if we go the opposite way and say, look, I'm not bothered, I'm not gonna level it, I'm just gonna take the strings up. Well, we know that raising the strings higher, the action at both ends will fix anything pretty much. It's always a simpler way out, but we're not looking for that. We're looking for a nice low action with, you know, which will play with as little buzz or slap. Now this is returned, so I don't know if there's a little dent in the profile there, but this is now needs to go backwards a little tiny bit to flatten it out. Only a small amount, but so there's a difference between those two quote unquote tracks, or inverted commas tracks, and that's touching now. So just a little adjustment. Thing is, I don't really need to know exactly why that's happening. I just know what to do is to change the profile of the tool to match the actual relief, and then you just get in there and gently level away. So in the softening of the fret ends in a minute, take away any sharp spots, we're going to do a sort of very gentle fret end file. The plus about that is that we get slightly softer and less spiky fret ends. The negative is in doing that you lose some of the smart machine cut shape of the fret ends. You know, they look great when they're done with a bevel or a machine, beveling block I should say, or a machine. And when you round them off, they end up looking less machine-like. That A is pretty good. It's fractionally better than the D, so I'm just going to retrack over the D once more, just to be sure. And of course, what I'm listening for and looking for is, you know, you sort of pick it up over years of doing this, like knowing how much to adjust there. Still, oh, my stomach's hungry. So still, there's quite a dip there. Now, if there were, for example, a dent, a really highly visible dent there, then adjusting like this wouldn't necessarily be the right idea, because it's so specific. We wouldn't want to bring everything else down, unless, of course, that the fret in that dip is causing a problem. One of the things you learn over years of fret leveling, it's the low frets that basically dictate what's possible and what isn't. So we often start out doing this work thinking that high frets are your problem, and actually the ones that are your constraint are your low frets, because they make the next fret effectively or relatively high compared to the low one. So you have to bring the ones around it down. And that, so if you have a couple of, you know, a valley I call it, with 2 or 3 frets in it down here, you have to bring everything either side down, so that when you fret a note in there, it isn't hitting the normal height fret on the other side, because this is, you're effectively fretting in a ditch. And that's what really dictates how low you can go, and why you're leveling often. But most of the time it's to remove this fret slap. Now that's now back to slightly over curved, so we'll just take a tiny bit out. Some of these truss rods that I use for this, they're adjustable by touch, and they're that sensitive. But this one seems to like being turned with a hex key, so the kit is always a 5mm hex key for doing that adjustment. So that's nearly onto the correct radius. not radius, correct relief curve. And there we have it. Okay, so the low E. And very often, this is the string that moves most. Quite often on any guitar, not on this one, but on many guitars, quite often it's the case that the edge of the frets can be a little higher if they're not seated perfectly. So there's a lot of things that conspire to mean that the low E track seems to be quite fret slappy. But we tackle it the same way by just imposing the slightly more perfect sampled curve of this tool onto the slightly imperfect compressed and bumpy curve of the actual guitar neck. And this should be a section around there which needs a bit more attention. Of course, if you're new to this, you could be quite nervous at this point, saying, I don't want to go back on and do any more fret leveling because I feel like I've done too much here or not enough. So I'm focusing on the frets leading up to the 12th fret. Now, as I'm doing that, of course, the frets either side of it will get some treatment, but if we need to kind of bottom out or take down peaks around the 12th fret, then we're doing it. And we have to, it has to happen to some degree. All the frets have to be worked at the same time. Okay, I think I'm happy with where that is. So, got the relief where I'm happy. Before we take these strings off, these are going to be kept as sacrificial strings. So what I want to do is to have a look at each of these fret nut slots individually. So I'll hang this back out of the way. Put that out of the way. We'll get the nut files out. We'll also get the fret end files out for when we get the strings off. We'll do some things with the fret ends with that. So here, my concern is to get a good close-up look at the nut there. Will you stay there? Yeah, not the brightest thing in the world, is it? So what I want to do, first of all, is I want to get a little bit of this stuff, graphite in there. It's barely it's hard to even see. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put these strange things on. See if I can look through this including with my glasses on. Somewhere up here there's a light. Is that a light? Oh yeah, not a very good one there. I'm seeing through two pairs of glasses, so it might not be the best thing in the world. I have a feeling it's probably better to use these without. I could be wrong. Yeah. I'll try and do it without. So I'm going to first of all use, start on this one. I'm going to use the G. Now it's got some graphite in it already. And what I'm looking for is I want this to be, I don't want to take it down anymore, but I want it to be leaning backwards. And it's quite, because of the way people do their, let's put a bit of green tape on there. Because of the way people do their slots, you can often find that they're quite deep, and I don't like them this deep. They don't need to be that deep, so I'm going to pull this up onto here. I can get under here. Oh, not like that, I can't. Stay there. Come on. These are definitely, for sure, not the best zoom in glasses I've ever had. So I'm just trying to get this stuff on here enough to work it and be able to see if we go too low. Okay. Yep, you can see. So I'm sort of just tipping backwards, and what I want to do is I want to widen this to a point where I can see it cutting the bottom, but cutting it backwards. And I don't want it to cut the front edge. That's what I'm trying to avoid. But I've got the angle at the moment. The angle's definitely tilting backwards, and it's not running onto the paper at the back, I don't think. No. So it's quite good. It's telling me that I'm making some widening impact, and I'm getting quite, doing quite well without scuffing the green. Now I'm just touching it now, so I've got to kind of come back a bit on the angle. So the sort of effort here is just to widen this a little bit so we don't get any pinching in the slot, but without lowering it. So we're widening it, cutting down on the pinch in the slot, but attempting to ensure that the string jumps off a fairly unique, defined point, I should probably say, at the top there. So again, I can see it. It's telling me I haven't touched the front edge because it hasn't taken away the that stuff. Am I touching the edge? Just. So it's deeper. That's a way deeper than I would want to go in the slot. Really, personally, I'd like it much better if that was all taken down and these strings were just barely sitting in there. It's not the world's deepest thing. The other thing about this, I've got a sneaky feeling with my strange Dr. Somebody glasses on. If I just look at this angle here, and I really can't see properly. Yes. Yeah, there is an angle. It just seems very slight. Okay, now we go to the B, and we put some stuff in there. I mean, it's so narrow, it's hard to even get some in there. Then we go with the B, the 13, and we're doing the same thing here. Yeah, just keeping it angled back. This one seems to be a little bit less congested. And then the idea is to just get this angle cut all the way through without disturbing the front edge. But as I say, this is really it's a little bit too deep to work it very effectively. It's slightly annoying. Okay, so I'm just getting that front bit there. Yeah, it's not an ideal shaped slot. Like I say, we want it to come up and launch off the front edge. that is still good, and it's still just about good on the height. Let's try it. A bit of colouring in on here. Push that out the way. How well you get when cutting slots backwards like this depends on how much wood is sticking out this side. If it's a long piece of rosewood behind there, if it's designed that way, then you can end up a bit stuck because you can't get any angle. You bump into the rosewood on the other side, and that limits the angle you can use. So that's a bit annoying. Yeah, that's a ton of extra material. I mean, I could shave it back. It's what I would tend to do. I think I'm going to do that. I don't like having loads of material. Who's bleeping at me? Someone. Oh, I'm still using my strange googles. So what you can do with this is you can basically reduce backwards what you don't need. Do it nice and tidily, but there's no reason to have material above the string doing nothing. It's getting in the way in the form of a large, forcing you to have a deep slot. So we can polish this out any amount afterwards, but basically you can see how far the string goes in there, and you can sand this whole thing down until you've hardly got any there, because it doesn't need anything above the string. I mean, it needs, the string ideally sits in sort of half its own depth of slot. Yeah, I mean, it's just a ton of stuff. And bone, of course, is quite hard to work. So this thing's putting up a fight, as it were. Because these are sacrificial strings, basically you can keep working them until you basically run into the strings themselves. And this one, you can see straight away that we're not even down there on this D string yet. Of course, the worst that will happen is that the string breaks, but these are going to be junked anyway. So yeah, just trying to bring it down to a much shallower seating. Of course, it's just time consuming, and if we go along the top of all of these, are we just about touching? We might just be touching the string there, but the other one's not yet. So we've all got too much material. That one's probably touching. So that's a start to get this down to where we don't have too much material above it. And then technically, once we have that cleaned up a bit, we get a much better run at the slots we want to adjust. If I can get the material in there, like so, and like so. So you can see it, depending on the angle I take, I've got a lot of room to maneuver to get a stroke of the file. Boing. There you go. Let me see the gap. There's the gap. Yep. Okay, slightly better. Now I can get in easily there. 17. 17. So again, not yet touching the front edge, just about there. That's what I want. Let's have a look at these. This one. Sorry, it's not very exciting, no commentary, but hey, that's the way it goes sometimes. When you're concentrating on something, you tend to run out of smart things to say. It's just about touching the front edge. And the A track. 36. It looks big under these glasses, but it's not that big up close. So once I've got the strings off in a minute, I'll do a bit more filing on here to bring it down to where it has to be, or a bit as low as it can be. As I say, there's no point having more bone sticking up there than is required. Okay, that feels right, or looks right. Obviously out of something. Off, please. Thank you. You can go over there. Oh, excuse me a minute. Blow the nose. So tomorrow I'm technically off, as in I will be at home doing some various different guitar jobs at home. Just means that I don't come in the afternoon, I don't come up to here. And I'm up here mostly 6 days a week, or 6 evenings a week, along with doing everything else. Okay, so I'm going to get all these strings off now. and I'll straighten them out and use them as sacrificial strings for doing other setups, which is always handy to have. I've got quite a few old sets here, and rest assured they never get used again for a guitar. They are only sacrificial string worthy. So what I can do is get a big old, actually what I can do is probably just as easily get this and mark up so we can see where we're taking away. I've got a couple of different things I can sand with to move things along. So the first thing I'm going to look at doing is I'm going to make sure yikes, I said something about having loads of sacrificial strings. I've managed to get them hooked all together into one loop there. So if I put some of this stuff, take a bit of the stick off it maybe, put a bit of this behind here just to be on the safe side. We don't want to run into anything. That's probably fine. Yes, so get our thing here. You can probably see. Now I can sort of take it backwards at a little bit of an angle now. And hopefully, basically even everything out. So really the matter here is just about checking for the amount of material and height, so you've got enough for your string to go in. Take this thin one here. Yeah, that's getting better. It's much less extreme now. So what I'm now going to do is move to a smoother grit and just iron it out. It's looking good. I've got a bit of pen on the edge there, but that's no problem. We can take care of that by running a thingy down the front of it. Just again, it helps take off the sharp corners of the finger. Doesn't affect the string launch point, but it takes that little bit of pen away. There we are. And then if we really want to clean out the last bit of the slots, what we probably do is do a little bit of sanding down here just to round off the fret. And on this side. Sorry, forgive me, I moved out of the way for a minute. Just take it down like so. Okay, and then like if there's a bit caught in the slot, then you can get the correct one and just clean it out like so, and without taking it any lower. Of course it's making trouble, but that will do. Okay, that's much nicer and lower profile. And again, if we did want to have another go at just rounding off that back edge of it, if it's still a bit too square, we can just put our little guide on and then run over it like so. That will help to round it off, so it will feel as smooth as it can be without affecting the nut performance in any way. It's just a sort of cosmetic feel thing. All right. Okay, so that's that done. Now I'm going to do the next bit, which is the fret ends. So I'm just gonna point you at them, see if you get a slightly better view. So the fret ends, there's really two things we can do. We can either or, and we can get this concave file. We can just run over the ends a little bit, which takes a tiny bit more, or rounds them a little bit more than they were at the factory or in the workshop. It just gives a little bit of rounding, extra rounding, and it's not a problem. It doesn't take much, and then we'll follow up by going into the corners of the frets with the other file. The only thing we've got to do is be careful where this goes up here around the bodywork. You don't want it running off the edge and scraping into paint. Although on this guitar it will probably be a pleasant feature that somebody will pay for. Watch the invoice price go up. And once I've done these fret end bits, then we're going to recrown the frets and then get into the drawn out process of sanding and polishing them out, which I'll do off camera so I can have a drink and listen to something on the machines of noise. So that's that side. Before I turn it round, I might as well go over that bit with this file. So, well, it's easy to see, but I just go right into the corner here and sort of take off any little burr. Sometimes you get a little tiny burr. Now this, as I say, this slightly spoils what was before a kind of very machine looking end finish, and that's just, I'm afraid that's the way it goes. You only have one or the other. If it's sharp and precise looking, it's got a kind of cutting edge to it, because what you've got is a very sharp intersection between this plane and that plane. And if you don't want to feel it, then you have to soften it off, which tends to round off the shape. That's why some of the ultimate fret ends these days that manufacturers seem to be turning to for this comfort thing is the semi-hemispherical fret ends, where they, instead of beveling the frets, they kind of pull them back from the edge and fit them with a pre-rounded end, which is smooth from any angle you approach it from. Now, downside of that, it's very hard to do perfectly by hand. I mean, you with a grinding a little small belt sandery type thing, a little jeweler type one, you can actually get very good semi-hemispherical fret ends, surprisingly good ones. But what you can't get so easily is you can't get them, because they're cut to length by hand, because you're not using the end beveling file to fix the length or set the length. Yeah, so because you're doing it by hand, you get a sort of, it's impossible to get them all exactly the same machine length finish, so you end up with a little bit of wonder. You get a tiny bit of wonder down the edge. It's just the way it is, said Bruce Hornsby. Diddling ding ding, diddling ding ding, diddling ding 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 diddling. Okay, there we go. Rounding off all the way down. Yeah, so I'm about to kick off with this experiment with the steam, and it's really by way of testing, a claim that somebody's made. And as I said, it's not so much whether or not heating it up and steaming a guitar, a box construction acoustic guitar. It's not that I think it won't change its shape, because I'm sure it will. The real question is, whether it will do it in a way that's productively long enough lasting, you know, that first of all that it does it long lasting in a way that you benefit from it and don't find yourself having to do it 5 minutes later. But the other thing is that also to be able to ascertain for myself whether or not it causes any other issues that I really don't want to see happening. So because of the thoughts I have about what's happening with heat and steam inside an acoustic guitar, probably differs from the opinions that I think maybe the chap who has promoted this method may think is happening. A lot of people, I'm not saying him because I haven't spoken to him, but quite a few people who pick up with this method talk about it as if they think they're bending timber with steam and heat. And in fact, if you look at the sort of cross-section of the structure, you're not really bending any timber at all. It's not a matter of bending timber to get this thing, or get your acoustic guitar that's close to needing a neck reset back to playability. What you're really doing is you're softening up the structure of the guitar in order to deform whatever it is that holds it in that structure long enough to bend or deform it out of shape. And that's actually a completely different matter. And if you think about the guitar as having a flat surface, the soundboard, standing on a pre-bent, and let's say the bent part about it is irrelevant really, the pre-bent sides, which you know, are standing up like so, and then you have a flat section that stands on top of it like so. Now we know that it doesn't matter what shape this is, whether it's curved or whatever, we know that that will take the weight. That's fairly strong there. It may bend a bit in the middle, but you know, we also know that it's all held together by loads of little wooden angles glued in all the way around the shape to hold these pieces from doing this in any direction. So it holds it rigid by having all these little glued things together, and then it has a lot of strength downwards because of these sides and so on. But the problem is when you're coming to steam it, you're not steaming the neck and making the neck droop or curve or anything. What you're doing is you're basically steaming. You've got the neck there, and you're steaming this so that you can bend the heel outwards, and so the guitar's kind of gone a bit like this. You're loosening up all of these little elbows or knees or whatever they're called, purflings, I can't remember the name. And then you're doing a clamping maneuver while this is soft and malleable. And if it's soft, it's not the wood that's soft. What's soft is the glue and the joint that's otherwise stiff with the glue. So what you're going to do is you're going to bend it all around, and as you bend this down, you bend out the bottom and you restructure, or you rearrange the shape. So you kind of pressure or force this box structure into a new shape. Then you let it cool, and it hopefully stays in that shape. But none of it was achieved by, strictly speaking, by bending wood in the sense that we talk about bending wood. So I think it's about weakening an already inadequate box structure and forcing it back in the direction that it perhaps started with but has moved away from. And the question for me then becomes really serious questions of, well, if the true strength of this thing was really only dictated by the strength of those little elbow joints that hold it all together, then are we really believing that once we've heated them up, steamed them, bent it out of the way, effectively done some manipulation of the structure, are we really at all confident that that's going to end up stronger once we've let it all cool than it was before? Or even, are we even confident that it's going to be as strong as it was before? Because I don't have a feeling it will be. That's my experience-based guess, right? And it is only a guess, and that's why, you know, we have the scientific method of experimentation. So, you know, I wouldn't go on somebody's site and say, I'd happily go on and say, this is what I kind of, from what little or much I know, I have a feeling that this is what is going on, but I would have to experiment in a way that I could test that assumption, and that's what I'm planning to do with Paul's acoustic, bless him. And it's a good deal for him, because if I'm if it breaks and the whole thing is ruined, then it wasn't playable anyway, and it doesn't have any huge intrinsic value. But if it does work, he gets his guitar back. I get my experiment done with plenty to learn from it, and he gets his guitar back more playable. So I think it's a fair, at no cost to him, I have to say, just from having lent it for the experiment. So I think that seems to me a fairly good deal. It's worth taking a chance, and of course it's always worth taking a chance on learning something. So you can see I'm moving pretty quickly through all these frets. There's not a lot that needs a long period of leveling. I get a little bit more here, but that's about it. And I can tell you from previous experience that this is a very limited amount of fret leveling, strictly speaking. So no matter how much time it looked like I was spending on it, it was light. I was handling it lightly, and we really haven't taken a lot of a lot of material away. So that's pretty good. This is the bit that always tells you or confirms to you what you suspected about how much you've leveled. I mean, of course, you get a feeling for it as you're doing the leveling, but this bit, when you come to crown the leveled frets, this bit will really confirm the amount you've done. And it, as you get more experience, you realize you're judging it better, and it's not a surprise. And like I wasn't in the slightest bit worried, because I knew that was a very small amount of leveling. So that's that bit done. Don't worry about the dust, by the way. The dust is not magnetic. I've said this on every video, but just it's always worth mentioning it. When people would worry about the fret dust getting anywhere near the pickups and so on, and I would be, all those years, I'm pretty confident everything I knew about it was telling me that it wouldn't stick, or it wasn't attracted by magnets. And then I just thought, look, I can't keep telling people this, so I did an experiment on camera to demonstrate what I was saying, was my hypothesis, basically. And it's true. It proved that nickel silver fret wire, which is copper and brass or whatever, no, copper and nickel, anyway, something or other, that the regular fret wire, which we call nickel silver, is not in the slightest bit ferrous and has no attractive tendency towards even the strongest magnets. So these frets here, none of this dust has any interest in sticking to the pickups in any way, shape or form. So I can tell you that for a fact. Nor does stainless steel. It has no ferrous interest in the magnets. I don't know if it's got ferrous nature, but it certainly doesn't have any magnetic attraction. The one type of fret wire that I found that had the very, very slightest attraction it surprised me actually, was in fact Evo Gold. And it was only insofar as I've got a huge, great neodymium magnet, about an inch across, kind of used for repairing acoustic guitar top cracks. Anyway, I put it right up close, within like a millimeter of a sprig of Evo Gold, and it just caused it to sway. The stick of fret wire kind of swayed towards the magnet. But I mean, it's a huge pull, and it's up right close to it. So yes, given the choice of flying away or would it stick to the pickups, Evo Gold dust would probably just about stick for a moment, but you could probably blow it off with a puff of your cheeks, if you get what I mean. So to all intents and purposes, panic ye not. When you see somebody doing fret leveling like this, you are not running any risk of having your pickups clogged up with strangely alien magnetic fret dust, because it isn't magnetic. There we go. So you can tell somebody when you hear it misquoted in the future, and you remember my video, and you'll feel for a moment, you'll go, oh, but that's not my experience exactly, but Sam's, I heard it on Sam's video, and he did say he'd done an experiment. And you can trust me on anything. You can trust that I wouldn't tell you the story if I hadn't done the thing I just told you about. So if you trust me in any shape or form, you can confidently say to someone, yeah, well, somebody I trust, luthier or technician or whatever you call me, did this experiment and there was no traction at all. So, and it's on one of my, or a couple of my videos here have done the same thing. I'm not sure if I named it, is fret wire magnetic or is it attracted by pickups? I'm not sure if I named it that, but either which way, it's here on my file, my archive somewhere, but it doesn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking the strings off to help poke them off to keep them for future use. If they're damped, I need a thinner thing. And then I'm going to just reset my brain and make sure I've covered everything I want to do with all of the bits off wherever we are right now. And then I'll check my to-do list. That's the way to do it, is look at what Ian specifically asked me. So he said, I said dial in a tiny bit of relief. He said excessive string buzz, which we've taken care of with the precision fret leveling. He said sharp fret ends. He said nut is okay unless you have a reason you want to change it. And I would have changed it had, when we set the action lower, had we ended up with too low first fret actions. But as it happens, they've ended up good. Perfect. So now I'm going to mask all of this off. And off camera, I'm going to do sanding and polishing, boring stuff. And then we'll come back, give the guitar a dust over, check everything is where it should be, wrong thing. And then we will restring and set the tremolo just a fraction floating, and I'll go through that process. And I guess the thing that Ian, only one thing you'll need to remember, if he wants to set it down to, set it to down only, he has to raise the action, down only, lowers it, he'll have to raise the action by 0.5 millimeter on each string. But I'll come to that when I come to it. So that'll be it for now. I'm going to go and have a drink, mask this off. See you shortly. So, done. And while I was off camera, I did my sampling of the profile. The one thing I didn't check was exactly what radius it is, but it's probably, I should imagine it's 9.5. Let's just double check, shall we? Ooh. Ooh. Blimey. Harumph. That's, do you know what it is? It's 10. It's genuine 10-win. So that's part of the deal. Let's write it down. We can't leave anything out. Radius equals 10 inches. There we are. So that's all the precision stuff done, and I've got my little map of the good stuff. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just iron the fingerboard, and then we'll put on the strings, new strings, and then we'll set up the tremolo and make sure everything's in tune. New strings, stretch them, tremolo, intonate. So if you remember, Ian's probably heard this years ago on guitar I did for him years ago. When it comes to tuning stability on your guitar, by and large it comes down to two primary things: your nut and the amount of unreleased slack in your strings. And the nut, in order to not to put the guitar out of tune, the nut has to be of, well, basically the slots have to be free running, and they must not bind the strings or hold the strings. And bone is capable, as here, of being a good substance which doesn't grab the strings, but as you saw, we have to work it quite a lot to get it where we need it. which isn't a bad thing, but it does take time. I like tusk a lot of the time, but that's just me. So getting your nut right is the first important part. So it's got to be good material, cheap plastic, grab the strings. Sometimes cheap nut, you know, Chinese bleached nuts can grab the string as well. By the way, I gave that blemish a clean down there, but it didn't want to come off. And I think it's a fill, a colour fill or something. I don't know if there's a crack that's been covered up, but I don't want to polish it off with an abrasive cream because yeah, you might end up with an unsightly crack. So see what you think when you get it back in. Anyway, yeah, so what was I saying? I've forgotten. Oh yeah, tuning stability. So think of it as 50% your nut and 50% the unreleased slack in your strings. So we get the nut right, and then the next thing we do is we make sure that we stretch out the slack in the new strings and get that right, and it should play in tune even, and providing that your tremolo has free movement, unrestricted movement, and it's not catching on anything, which this one doesn't seem to be, then you should have really nice stable tuning, even using the Stratocaster tremolo, which is often unfairly blamed for putting guitars out of tune. And it's not the it's not the tremolo's fault that the guitar goes out of tune when you use it. It's the fault of the friction in the nut and or unreleased slack in the strings. So those two things are what's making the guitar go out of tune. But the tremolo, of course, finds it and helps it on its way. That's the thing. There's nothing intrinsically about the tremolo that shouldn't, vibrato unit, which shouldn't work, but it does. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to load up on the pegs. Oh, sorry, I haven't got a very good view. I don't know what I was doing. Let's load up on the pegs, get some cutters. I've lost one set. Where have they gone? Okay, so with these split post tuners, I go up to the tuner post, 2 posts beyond, and then cut it, and then stick it in, fold it back, turn to the side, and wind it on. Now some people, and it's not a bad idea, some people wind more on than that because they use the existing stuff. They use the existing, this extra stuff to sort of send the windings further down the post, so you get a better break angle by having more windings. For me, it's a good idea, but I think it works if you just keep it to this 2 posts past the one you're doing, because that way you get enough without overloading it with extra material that will hold the slack of the strings, which you don't want either. So this neck that I sampled, inverted commas, I took my measurements from, it's quite relatively thick compared to the one I'm currently building, so it starts the thickness at the first measuring point round about there is 21.7 mils. The thickness at the middle point is 23.75, which is another 2, and then it goes another 2 by the end, which goes up to 25.75. So that's a lot of, yeah, it's a lot of widening. On the one I'm making right now, it barely goes up 1 in the entire, oh shoot, I've just cut this slightly too short, you damned, no, not too short, it's dropped back in the hole, blimey. Yeah, so it's quite a bit, not quite a bit, it's thicker than what I'm making, so up and stay up. Okay, so we're going to do this stretching bit in a minute. We'll get all of the slack we can out of the strings, and we'll intonate, and then we'll set up the tremolo floating, because I think it worked so well previously. It just seemed like a good thing to do. Sometimes, I mean, if you do go with that, oh, let's set it downward, the only reason I would suggest that is sometimes if I'm doing it for a customer and I you know, make a judgment that the customer wouldn't be confident in changing the saddle heights if they were in future to decide they didn't want it floating, you know, then I would say, look, if it's not something you use, I'd advise just setting it down only to begin with. But if that's not the case, since it came to me from Ian already floating, then I'm going to set it floating and just extend the range slightly. So stretching game, we get the thumb and the forefinger and we grab the string and we push and pull. And that, now this is pulling up the tremolo plate at the moment, the bridge plate, but that's okay. We're in the right place to start the setup for the floating trem. We use the Galeazzo Frudua method, slightly amended by myself. It's a very simple, fun method. Oh, interesting. What in the name of... Hold on. How come you're doing that? Wait a second. This is not what I want. I'm going to just... No, I'm not going to pull those out because they all just fell out. What am I wanting? I want a 17. Thank you. Let's try one of these old style ones. I want this slot clear. I want a pinging thing going on. Thank you. Right, stretch. Okay, that was interesting, just a little shaggy bit of nut slot catching the string there. Okay, so this is stretching all of these. I think I went the wrong way, didn't I? I started on the fat string, went forward, came back, confused myself, got to here, didn't do the B, doing it now, and I've been careful on the 10, the high E. Now we're going to tune again. Right, a bit more stretching. The wound strings will hold on to the slack a bit longer than the plain ones will, you'll find. Let's see. That's coming out, isn't it? That's what's happening now. Okay, now once we've done this, we'll get ready to do the tremolo setting. Let's do the intonation first, then we'll do the tremolo. So, guitar lead. So we're working as a hard tail at the moment, so it's easier to do the intonation with it set as a hard tail. It just is more stable from a tuning point of view. Where have you gone? What's going on? Could be the battery going on that. Check. Right. So that's intonated already, which is good. No adjustment needed. Now I'm going to do the. Oh, I haven't got the things I need anymore. Holy cow! Oh, maybe I'll do it. I need these things. Oh, I do need. Hang on, I need this again. Stupid me. What? Right. So the tuner floating method is really simple and elegant, and the only difficult part of setting your tremolo is how do you choose to set it at this stage so that it gives you that sort of finite range of movement, or that predictable range of movement. So what we do is we just tune up. Doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter that it's lying on its side at the moment. Oh, sorry, on its back. Okay, so what we do is we put the tremolo in, and we press down with the tremolo until the G becomes an E. And then we fit in a bunch of post-it notes, E flat. Okay, so now we tune this back up to G. Oh, do you know, I forgot to do, the one thing I forgot to do every time. Tune it back to a normal tuning, sorry. Ignore everything I just said. There's your normal tuning. Let's get our thing back. Okay, we'll get our UK one back. So we have this currently set up at our ideal tuning. I've leveled it to the target action. So I know that when we do the floating set, it's going to raise the action by 0.5 mil. So what I want to do is I want to send it back down by 0.5 mil. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark up a point on here, which makes it look like a very rude thing, but it's not the point. And I'm going to get hold of each one of these and I'm going to wind out by 1/2 a turn, which is going to lower the whole lot by 0.5 mil. Just so happens it's about 1/2 a turn, and that 0.5 mil will compensate for the rise. Now if I play it now in a minute, because I've lowered it 0.5 millimeter, it will not be playable because I set it up for 0.5 mil taller and we leveled it for 0.5 mil taller, so it's probably going to choke out at this setting. But by the time I've reset in a moment the thing, it's going to be, this has obviously affected the tuning straight away, so we just go back to pitch. I can support it probably. It still plays, but you're probably going to get buzzing out if you play on here. So what we do is we send this down to E, if you remember. Spot on. Then we tune it back up to G. Now come on. G. B. And we take a post-it notes out and suddenly it's gone all sharp. And you think, but that's terrible, that's the end of everything. Well, it isn't, because now we get, our these, and we return the G, which is now an A, back to being a G by dialing out the tremolo screws. So we're detuning again back to where we want to be. G sharp, coming down towards G, and when that is a G, we'll be at the place where we're floating as much as we want. I keep losing the plectrums. G sharp still, keep going out with the tremolo screws, and what will happen is you'll probably have seen that the rear plate is now going up, which is what we want. G sharp-ish, sharp of G. And a couple of turns here. I expect we're on G. There we are. Floating in the most peculiar way. That is how high it floats to get you a tone and a half on the G, a tone on the B, and half a tone on the E. And it's back to our target action, which happens to be, let's look at that. It's a bit higher than I wanted it, so it's more than 0.5 mil. Humph. Well, my worry is now if I start adjusting this down now to take it where I want it to be, what's going to happen is it's going to affect the overall tuning too much. Let's go down to there. Let's go down to there. And that's about right for some reason. Okay, that's good. We'll stop there. So that's it, ladies and gents. Set up with the floating tremolo in the standard kind of intervals. This thing probably needs a new battery. I'll make sure I bring one out. Okay, thanks for watching. I'm going to wrap up and I will see you on the next one. Typical, I've run out of storage. Oh, it's always the same. Not now. I don't know when that ran out, but I've got you to rely on. Thank goodness.